film crew walks through Tehran's Imam Khomeini Airport, carrying equipment cases stamped with Hollywood studio logos. Cameras, lighting rigs, sound gear, everything looks legitimate. Customs officers wave them through with barely a glance. Behind designer sunglasses and casual smiles, 3 of these crew members carry secrets that could trigger international catastrophe. They are not filmmakers. They are Mossad operatives executing one of the most audacious infiltration operations ever conceived. Their target? Iran's nuclear program. Their cover? A documentary about ancient Persian architecture. Their timeline? 72 hours before Iranian intelligence discovers the deception. The cameras rolling through airport security contain more than film stock. Hidden within modified battery packs are encrypted communication devices. Concealed in lighting equipment are miniaturized surveillance tools designed in Tel Aviv laboratories. And embedded in the minds of these supposed Hollywood professionals is training that transforms ordinary conversation into intelligence collection, casual observation into reconnaissance, and every handshake into potential recruitment. This is the story of Operation Celluloid Shadow, the mission that proved entertainment could be weaponized, and that sometimes the best way to hide is in plain sight, beneath Klieg lights and directors' chairs. If stories like this fascinate you, subscribe now so you don't miss other incredible operations from Mossad's secret history. Hit that bell icon, because the next investigation drops soon. The operation's genesis occurred 18 months earlier, in a windowless conference room beneath Mossad headquarters in Tel Aviv. Intelligence analysts had identified a critical gap in Iran's nuclear security. While satellite surveillance captured external facility details and signals intelligence intercepted communications, human intelligence remained dangerously thin. Iran's counterintelligence apparatus had systematically dismantled Israeli networks, executing agents and imprisoning informants. Traditional recruitment methods had become nearly impossible. Security services monitored foreign businessmen, journalists faced constant surveillance, and NGO workers attracted immediate suspicion. But one category of foreigners moved with relative freedom: entertainment professionals. Iran's government, eager to reshape its international image, had begun welcoming select film projects that portrayed Persian culture positively. Documentary crews received access to historical sites, cultural landmarks, even some government facilities under controlled conditions. This presented an opportunity that Mossad's operations division recognized immediately. The concept was deceptively simple: establish a legitimate production company in Europe, develop a credible documentary project, secure Iranian approval, and use the filming process as cover for intelligence collection and asset recruitment. The execution would be infinitely complex, requiring months of preparation, flawless tradecraft, and the ability to maintain cover while operating under constant scrutiny from one of the world's most paranoid security states. The mission architect was David Shaham, a Mossad planning officer whose previous operations included the Dubai assassination and the extraction of nuclear materials from Pakistan. Shaham understood that success required absolute authenticity. The production company had to be real, the documentary had to be genuine, and the cover identities had to withstand investigation by Iranian intelligence services that would certainly probe every detail. Subscribe to follow more untold stories of espionage that governments never wanted you to know. Mossad established Crescent Films GmbH in Vienna, Austria, in March 2020. The company received legitimate registration, maintained an actual office, and hired real employees who had no knowledge of its true purpose. The cover team included an Austrian producer with genuine film credits, a German cinematographer, and administrative staff who believed they worked for an authentic documentary production house. Into this legitimate structure, Mossad inserted 3 operatives with deep cover identities built over years. Rachel Hartman, 34, posed as the lead producer. Her legend was meticulously constructed. Born in Munich, educated at UCLA Film School, with credits on minor documentaries that actually existed and could be verified through industry databases. She had attended film festivals, maintained social media presence, and developed relationships with real filmmakers who could unknowingly vouch for her authenticity. In reality, Rachel was Mossad case officer Maya Kessler, a Persian-speaking intelligence specialist with 8 years of field experience across the Middle East. The cinematographer was introduced as Thomas Richter, 41, a veteran documentary shooter with an impressive portfolio spanning conflict zones and cultural projects. His real identity was Avi Moore, a former Sayeret Matkal commando who had transitioned into intelligence work, bringing tactical skills that might prove essential if the operation collapsed. The third operative, embedded as location scout and cultural consultant, was Layla Mansour, 28, who claimed Lebanese-French heritage and fluent Farsi. She was actually Noah Azuleh, a Mossad officer specializing in asset recruitment, trained in the psychological techniques that transform casual contacts into intelligence sources. Together, they formed the operational core, supported by unwitting legitimate crew members whose genuine ignorance would provide additional cover if Iranian counterintelligence investigated. The documentary's premise was carefully chosen. Echoes of Persia, architecture and identity in modern Iran. The concept explored how ancient Persian architectural principles influenced contemporary Iranian design, providing justification for filming at historical sites, universities, cultural centers, and potentially near-sensitive facilities. The project received initial development funding through a European cultural grant, adding another layer of legitimacy that Iranian authorities would verify. Crescent Films submitted the proposal through official channels in June 2020, including detailed shot lists, interview requests, and a production timeline. Iranian Ministry of Culture and Islamic Guidance reviewed the application for 4 months, conducting background checks that Mossad had anticipated and prepared for. Every detail withstood scrutiny. The company existed, the filmmakers had verifiable histories, the funding appeared legitimate, and the project aligned with Iranian interests in promoting cultural heritage. Approval arrived in October with conditions. Government minders would accompany filming, certain locations required pre-approval, and all footage would be reviewed before departure. Mossad had expected these restrictions and built the operation around them. The real intelligence collection would occur not through obvious snooping, but through carefully orchestrated interactions, strategic observation, and the recruitment of sources who could provide access long after the film crew departed. The team arrived in Tehran on November 8, 2020, greeted by representatives from the Ministry of Culture and their assigned minder, a man introduced as Reza Ahmadi. Tall, mid-40s, with the watchful eyes of someone trained to notice inconsistencies. He spoke fluent English and German, maintained polite professionalism, and would remain with them throughout the 72-hour filming schedule. Rachel understood immediately that Ahmadi was intelligence service, probably VVAC, Iran's Ministry of Intelligence. His job was to ensure they filmed only approved content and made no unauthorized contacts. Her job was to work within those constraints while accomplishing objectives he would never detect. The first day focused on establishing routine and building rapport. They filmed at the Golistan Palace complex, capturing sweeping shots of tile work and architectural details while Rachel explained the documentary's vision to Ahmadi. Thomas operated the camera with professional competence that came from months of training at a film school Mossad had arranged. Layla took notes, sketched diagrams, and chatted casually with palace staff about historical details. Everything appeared exactly as it should, a professional crew executing a cultural documentary under official supervision. But beneath this surface, the operation's real work had begun. Rachel noted security camera positions and guard rotation schedules. Thomas's camera, modified in Tel Aviv, captured high-resolution imagery that intelligence analysts could later examine for details invisible to normal observation. Layla identified potential recruitment targets among the palace staff, looking for individuals displaying the psychological markers that suggested vulnerability to approach. Financial stress, professional frustration, ideological disillusionment. That evening, back at the Espionage Palace Hotel, the team conducted their first covert communications session. Rachel's laptop, appearing as standard editing equipment, contained encrypted messaging software hidden within legitimate video editing programs. A single keystroke sequence activated the secure channel connecting them to handlers in Tel Aviv. The message was brief, coded in technical film terminology that would seem innocent if intercepted. First day footage excellent. Locations scouted for tomorrow. Lighting conditions optimal. Decoded, this confirmed. Cover holding. Initial reconnaissance complete. Proceeding to next phase. The response arrived within minutes, embedded in what appeared as production notes from Vienna. Great work. Remember, focus on architectural details. Translation. Continue mission, maintain cover discipline. Day 2 brought them to Tehran University's School of Architecture, where the documentary's premise provided access to faculty and students. This location held strategic value beyond its academic facade. Intelligence indicated that several professors maintained consulting relationships with government construction projects, including facilities connected to Iran's nuclear program. Rachel's target was Professor Tabatabai, 62, a renowned architect who had designed government buildings and whose name had appeared in intercepted communications about sensitive infrastructure projects. The interview was scheduled for late afternoon in Tabatabai's office. Rachel prepared questions that would seem entirely appropriate for the documentary, while potentially eliciting intelligence of significant value. Thomas positioned cameras and lights, creating the technical setup that justified extended time in the space. Layla assisted with sound equipment while conducting visual reconnaissance of the office environment, noting documents, photographs, and anything suggesting the professor's true activities and connections. Tabatabai arrived precisely on time, carrying the formal courtesy of academic professionals who value punctuality. He spoke excellent English with a British accent from years studying at Cambridge. The interview began with discussion of Persian architectural history, the integration of light and geometry, the spiritual dimensions of space. Rachel guided conversation with practiced subtlety, building rapport through genuine engagement with topics the professor clearly loved. 30 minutes into the interview, she shifted direction carefully. Your work extends beyond historical analysis. You've designed contemporary government structures. How do you integrate traditional principles into modern functional buildings with specific security and operational requirements? Tabatabai's expression flickered with something Rachel recognized: the pride of someone whose true expertise is rarely acknowledged publicly. Modern requirements can be challenging, he said carefully, particularly when buildings must serve purposes requiring discretion. Such as? The question hung delicately between them. Tabatabai paused, aware that cameras were recording, then answered with professional ambiguity. Research facilities, places where sensitive work occurs. The architecture must balance accessibility with isolation, openness with protection. Rachel nodded as if this were merely academic. Fascinating. The duality of function and secrecy expressed through physical space. Exactly, Tabatabai said, relaxing slightly. I consulted on a facility near Natanz that exemplifies this. From outside, it appears as agricultural research center, but the internal structure incorporates radiation shielding, vibration isolation, redundant power systems, architecture serving purposes the exterior completely disguises. The admission seemed casual, almost proud, but Rachel recognized it as intelligence of significant value. Natanz was a known uranium enrichment site, but specific details about recent construction had been intelligence gaps. This single statement confirmed ongoing development and revealed architectural features that could inform targeting analysis if military action became necessary. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, covering theoretical architectural concepts, while Tabatabai occasionally revealed fragments of operational detail that intelligence analysts would later piece into comprehensive assessments. Thomas kept cameras rolling, capturing not just the interview, but background details. Documents visible on shelves, photographs on walls, a security badge partially visible beneath papers on the desk. When they finished, Rachel thanked the professor warmly, suggesting they might request a follow-up interview if time permitted. Tabatabai agreed readily, even offering his personal mobile number, a breach of protocol that suggested successful rapport building. As they packed equipment, Layla engaged a graduate student who had observed the interview from the doorway. The young woman, introduced as Nazanin, expressed fascination with documentary filmmaking and asked numerous questions about the production process. Layla recognized opportunity immediately. Nazanin displayed the markers Mossad recruitment training had taught her to identify: educated, idealistic, subtly critical of government restrictions on academic freedom, and curious about the outside world. She was precisely the type of person who, with careful cultivation, might provide access to information flowing through university channels connected to sensitive government projects. Layla suggested they continue the conversation over coffee, framing it as networking between young professionals. Nazanin accepted eagerly, providing another mobile number that operational protocols dictated she shouldn't have shared with foreigners. That evening, Layla met Nazanin at a cafe near Valiasar Street, maintaining the casual tone of friendly conversation while conducting what was essentially a recruitment assessment interview. She asked about Nazanin's studies, her career aspirations, her frustrations with limitations placed on research and international collaboration. The young woman spoke with surprising openness, perhaps naive about the implications, perhaps simply starved for connection with someone from outside Iran's restrictive environment. "Sometimes I feel like we're cut off from the world," Nazanin said quietly, stirring her tea. "The research I want to pursue requires collaboration, access to international databases, travel to conferences, but everything is restricted, controlled, monitored." Layla listened with practiced empathy. "That must be incredibly frustrating for someone with your obvious talent and ambition." "It is," Nazanin admitted. "And the worst part is watching professors like Tabatabai compromise their principles. He's brilliant, but he designs facilities for programs we're not supposed to question. Everyone knows what Natanz really is, what Fordau really is, but we pretend they're agricultural research, geological surveys. The lies become part of the architecture itself." This statement revealed something significant. Nazanin possessed knowledge about sensitive facilities and harbored ideological disillusionment that made her vulnerable to recruitment. Layla didn't push, understanding that asset development required patience. Instead, she planted seeds for future contact. "You know, we'll be editing this documentary for months after we leave Tehran. We might need cultural consultation, fact-checking, additional research. Would you be interested in working with us remotely? We could pay consulting fees, and it would give you international production experience." Nazanin's eyes brightened immediately. "Really? That would be amazing." They exchanged contact information, agreeing to stay in touch through encrypted messaging apps that Nazanin already used to circumvent government internet restrictions. Layla had just established the foundation for an intelligence relationship that could continue long after the film crew departed. The recruitment wouldn't happen during this operation. It would unfold gradually over months, through seemingly innocent communications, building trust until Nazanin might be willing to provide information, access, or connections that served Israeli intelligence interests. Day 3 brought the team to Isfahan, the architectural jewel of Iran, where they filmed at the Naqshi Jahan Square and the Sheikh Lotfola Mosque. The location served dual purposes, gathering legitimate documentary footage while conducting reconnaissance of a manufacturing facility on the city's outskirts that intelligence reports suggested produced centrifuge components. Their minder, Ahmadi, remained constantly present, but Rachel had observed his patterns. He relaxed when they filmed obvious cultural content, became vigilant when they deviated from approved locations, and frequently stepped away for phone calls that suggested he was reporting to superiors. During one such call, while the team filmed architectural details at the mosque, Thomas briefly detached from the main group, claiming he needed exterior lighting shots. He walked the perimeter with his camera, appearing to capture establishing shots of the building's dome and minarets. In reality, his modified camera was photographing the surrounding cityscape, focusing on industrial areas visible in the distance where satellite imagery had identified the suspected centrifuge facility. The images would provide ground-level perspective that complemented overhead surveillance, potentially revealing details about facility layout, security perimeters, and transportation access that satellites couldn't capture from their orbital vantage points. He returned within 8 minutes, well before Ahmadi finished his phone call, his brief reconnaissance undetected. That afternoon, they interviewed a master tile craftsman whose workshop operated near the facility Thomas had photographed. The interview provided legitimate content about traditional Persian ceramic techniques while allowing the team to observe the industrial area's daily rhythms, worker shift changes, truck traffic patterns, security vehicle movements. Rachel filmed the craftsman's hands shaping clay and painting intricate patterns while positioning herself to capture background views through the workshop's windows. Every frame served dual purposes. Documentary content layered over intelligence collection so seamlessly that even reviewing the footage wouldn't reveal its true function. The craftsman spoke passionately about geometric principles in Islamic art, explaining how mathematical precision created spiritual beauty. Rachel engaged genuinely, recognizing that the best cover was believing in it yourself. If you acted like a documentary filmmaker, thought like a documentary filmmaker, cared about the content you were supposedly creating, the performance became indistinguishable from reality. That evening, back in their Tehran hotel, the team conducted their most critical communication session. Rachel's laptop transmitted encrypted data packets containing the past 3 days' intelligence collection, photographs of sensitive locations, biographical details of potential recruitment targets, architectural information about nuclear-related facilities, and assessments of security protocols they had observed. The transmission disguised itself as routine backup of production footage to cloud storage servers. To any monitoring system, it appeared as exactly what a film crew would do, protecting their work against equipment failure or data loss. In reality, the data routed through multiple proxy servers before reaching Mossad's operations center in Tel Aviv, where analysts immediately began extracting intelligence value from material that had cost months of preparation and significant operational risk to obtain. The response from Tel Aviv arrived coded within what appeared as production notes. Excellent footage. Vienna office requests you extend shoot by 2 days if possible. Additional architectural sites identified for coverage. Decoded message. Intelligence collection successful. Headquarters authorizes extended operation. New targets designated. Rachel understood the implications immediately. Success had generated appetite for more intelligence, but extension carried exponential risk. Every additional day increased the probability of Iranian counterintelligence detecting anomalies in their cover. She convened an encrypted team conference in Thomas's room, activating white noise generators disguised as phone chargers to defeat potential audio surveillance. Tel Aviv wants 2 more days, she said quietly. They've identified additional targets worth the risk. Thomas leaned back, calculating. Ahmadi is already suspicious. I've caught him photographing us when he thinks we're not looking. Running our faces through recognition databases, probably. Agreed, Layla added. And Nazanin mentioned that foreign film crews are unusual enough that university security questioned her about our interview. We're generating attention. Rachel weighed the variables with the cold assessment that operations demanded. The intelligence we've collected justifies the mission already, but 2 more days could give us access to sources we won't get another chance at. The question is whether potential gain outweighs increased exposure risk. They debated for 30 minutes, analyzing every factor with the thoroughness that separated successful operations from disasters. Finally, Rachel made the decision that operational command authorized her to make. We extend, but we tighten discipline absolutely. No deviations from cover, no unnecessary risks. We film exactly what we're supposed to film, and collect intelligence only when opportunities present naturally. The 4th day proceeded with deliberate caution. They returned to Tehran University to conduct follow-up interviews with architecture students, providing Layla another opportunity to develop her relationship with Nazanin, while Rachel and Thomas gathered additional footage that would make the documentary appear legitimate if Iranian authorities ever reviewed their complete production archive. The real objective came that evening. Through channels established before the operation began, a contact had arranged for Rachel to meet someone identified only as the engineer, a government contractor with access to information about Iran's missile program. The meeting location was a bookstore near Ferdowsi Square, chosen for its public nature that provided security through visibility. Rachel arrived alone, maintaining cover as a documentary producer interested in Persian poetry, which the bookstore specialized in. She browsed shelves for precisely 12 minutes before a man in his 50s approached, selecting a volume near where she stood. The translations never capture Hafez's true meaning, he said in English, the recognition phrase establishing identity. Perhaps some things lose their essence in translation, Rachel replied with the counter phrase. They browsed together, speaking quietly between aisles where security cameras had limited coverage. The engineer's hands trembled slightly as he pretended to examine a book of Rumi's poetry. I can give you 15 minutes. Longer attracts attention I cannot afford. Understood, Rachel said. What can you tell me about current missile development programs? The engineer's information came in rapid, precise statements, born from someone who had clearly prepared exactly what to reveal. The Kheibar Shekan program has achieved ranges exceeding 1,400 kilometers with improved accuracy. Underground production facilities near Semnon are operating at full capacity. New solid fuel designs reduce launch preparation time to under 30 minutes. Each statement represented intelligence of significant strategic value, confirming capabilities that Western assessments had suspected but not confirmed. Rachel absorbed the information without writing anything, relying on memory training that allowed her to retain complex data for later transcription. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked quietly. The engineer's expression hardened with something resembling resignation. "Because this regime will destroy my country pursuing weapons we don't need for wars we cannot win. Someone needs to know the truth. Perhaps it will make a difference." He purchased 2 books, left cash on the counter, and walked out without looking back. Rachel waited 5 minutes before departing separately, her mind cataloging everything he had revealed. That single 15-minute conversation had produced intelligence that would inform Western assessments of Iranian military capabilities for months to come. The 5th and final day brought unexpected complications. Ahmadi arrived at their hotel that morning with a change in demeanor. The polite professionalism had been replaced by something colder, more calculating. He announced that their filming schedule required modification. Instead of the planned shoot at Azadi Tower, they would visit a different location, a cultural center on the city's eastern edge that hadn't been part of their original proposal. Rachel recognized the shift immediately. This was a test, possibly a trap. Iranian counterintelligence had likely detected something anomalous and was now probing to see how the film crew would respond. She maintained perfect composure, expressing mild disappointment about the schedule change while agreeing readily. Ahmadi's response was deliberately vague. The drive took 40 minutes through Tehran's chaotic traffic. Thomas sat in the back of the van, appearing to review footage on his camera while actually running through contingency protocols. If this was an arrest scenario, they had prepared responses. Maintain cover, absolutely. Demand consular access. Reveal nothing under interrogation. The cultural center turned out to be exactly what Ahmadi had described, a legitimate venue showcasing Persian calligraphy and contemporary Iranian art. But the entire visit felt performative, as if they were being observed, not just by Ahmadi, but by others watching remotely. Rachel conducted interviews with artists, filmed exhibitions, and maintained absolute commitment to their cover, while every instinct screamed that Iranian intelligence was testing them. After 2 hours, Ahmadi seemed satisfied. His demeanor warmed slightly as they departed. The subtext was clear. He had been evaluating whether they were genuine filmmakers or something else. Their performance had apparently passed inspection, at least for now. That evening they received final authorization from Tel Aviv to extract. The message came disguised as production wrap notification. Rachel felt relief mixed with professional satisfaction. They had accomplished the mission's primary objectives, collected significant intelligence, established recruitment contacts for future operations, and maintained cover throughout, despite Iranian security scrutiny. The final task was ensuring they departed without incident, carrying the intelligence they had gathered back to Israel, where it could be analyzed and operationalized. At the airport, they faced their most dangerous moment. Customs officials selected their equipment cases for secondary screening, a random check that might expose the operation if inspectors examined devices too closely. Rachel maintained calm while officials unpacked cameras and lighting gear. Thomas answered technical questions with the casual expertise of someone who actually worked with this equipment daily. The customs inspector examined a modified battery pack, turning it over with casual curiosity. Rachel's pulse accelerated while her expression remained perfectly neutral. For 5 seconds that felt infinite, he held it, then set the battery down and waved them through. They collected their equipment, walked through the departure gate, and boarded the flight to Vienna. Only when the aircraft lifted off Iranian airspace did Rachel allow herself a measured exhalation. The mission was complete. 3 hours later, they landed in Vienna, where a different team took possession of the equipment cases, transporting them to a Mossad facility, where analysts would extract every fragment of intelligence from cameras, hard drives, and encrypted storage. The documentary footage itself would actually be completed. Crescent Films would produce a legitimate film about Persian architecture that would screen at small festivals and maintain the company's cover for potential future operations. Weeks later, in Tel Aviv, Rachel attended the operation's classified debriefing. Senior Mossad officials reviewed the intelligence collected, the recruitment contacts established, and the lessons learned from 5 days operating inside one of the world's most hostile environments. The assessment was unequivocal: strategic success. Professor Tabatabai's statements about Natanz facility construction provided architectural intelligence that updated targeting packages. The engineer's information about missile programs confirmed capabilities that defense planners needed to account for, and Nazanin represented a potential long-term asset whose cultivation would continue through seemingly innocent communications. The operatives themselves returned to their cover lives. Rachel resumed her identity as Maya Kessler, already being briefed on the next operation. Thomas transitioned back to Avi Moore, his brief career as a cinematographer archived in the memory of a mission successfully completed. Layla became Noah Azulay again, maintaining her encrypted communications with Nazanin, patiently building trust that might someday produce intelligence worth the years of investment. In Tehran, Iranian counterintelligence eventually reviewed the documentary crew's visit. They found nothing definitive, only the lingering suspicion that always accompanied foreign visitors. Ahmadi filed his report, noting minor anomalies, but no concrete evidence of espionage. The investigation quietly closed, marked inconclusive. But in the invisible war between intelligence services, victory isn't measured in arrests or exposures. It's measured in information obtained, sources recruited, and operations completed without detection. Operation Celluloid Shadow represented more than a single successful mission. It became a template for how intelligence services could exploit the entertainment industry's global reach and cultural legitimacy. The operation demonstrated that, in an age of satellite surveillance and digital monitoring, the oldest form of espionage remained the most effective: human intelligence collected through patient interaction and carefully constructed deception. The documentary itself premiered 8 months later at a small film festival in Berlin. Critics praised its cinematography and cultural sensitivity. Iranian cultural officials attended, pleased to see their nation's architectural heritage portrayed positively. None of them suspected that the film they were watching had been created by Israeli intelligence operatives, or that much of the footage had served dual purposes they would never detect. The film even won a minor award for documentary cinematography, which Crescent Films accepted graciously, adding another layer of legitimacy to a company that existed primarily to support covert operations. Behind this public success, the intelligence extracted during those 5 days in Iran continued generating value. Analysts in Tel Aviv had processed thousands of images captured by modified cameras, identifying details about facility security, infrastructure development, and operational patterns at sensitive sites. The architectural information Professor Tabatabai had casually mentioned about Natanz underwent extensive analysis. Engineers created 3-dimensional models of the facility's internal structure based on his descriptions, updating targeting data that military planners would reference if strikes against Iran's nuclear program were ever authorized. The engineer's information about missile capabilities proved equally valuable. His statements about the Kheibar Shekan program's range and accuracy matched intelligence from other sources, confirming assessments that had previously been uncertain. Defense ministries across the Western Alliance updated their threat evaluations based partially on intelligence that originated in a 15-minute conversation in a Tehran bookstore. Strategic decisions about missile defense deployments and regional security arrangements incorporated data that a single brave Iranian contractor had risked his life to provide. But the operation's most significant long-term value came from the recruitment contact established with Nazanin. Over the following months, Layla maintained regular communication through encrypted messaging apps, gradually building the relationship from casual professional contact into something deeper. The conversations remained seemingly innocent: questions about Persian architectural terminology, requests for cultural fact-checking, discussions about documentary editing choices. Nazanin never suspected that each interaction was carefully calibrated to assess her recruitment potential and gradually normalize communication with someone who was actually an Israeli intelligence officer. 6 months after the filming concluded, Layla made the first subtle recruitment pitch. She mentioned that Crescent Films occasionally paid consultants for specialized research that required access to Iranian academic resources. Would Nazanin be interested in earning additional income by providing information about university research programs? The request seemed entirely reasonable, framed as documentary research rather than espionage. Nazanin agreed readily, grateful for the financial opportunity and the connection to international filmmaking. She had no idea she had just crossed the threshold from unwitting contact to recruited asset. The information she began providing seemed innocuous: faculty research topics, government contract announcements posted on university bulletin boards, names of visiting officials from various ministries. Each piece held minimal intelligence value individually, but collectively, they created a mosaic that revealed patterns about Iran's scientific priorities and government academic connections. Nazanin was providing exactly what Mossad had hoped: sustained access to an information environment that traditional intelligence gathering couldn't penetrate. And because she believed she was helping documentary researchers rather than spies, she felt no moral conflict about what she was doing. This represented the operation's true genius. The film crew had come and gone, but the intelligence network they established continued functioning long after their departure. Nazanin was just one contact among several cultivated during those 5 days. A graduate student at Tehran University, a government contractor troubled by his regime's policies, a tile craftsman who observed industrial facilities from his workshop. Each represented a potential source whose information could flow to Israeli intelligence for months or years, all connected through the innocent-seeming cover of documentary film research. The methodology revealed something profound about modern espionage. In an era when traditional spycraft faced unprecedented technical and security obstacles, creative covers could still penetrate closed societies. Entertainment, academia, commerce, humanitarian work all provided legitimate reasons for foreigners to access environments and develop contacts that purely intelligence-focused approaches could never reach. The key was patience and authenticity. Operations like Celluloid Shadow required months of preparation, significant financial investment, and operatives skilled enough to maintain cover while simultaneously collecting intelligence. But the returns justified the costs. Yet the operation also carried darker implications about the weaponization of culture and the exploitation of trust. The Iranian officials who had welcomed the documentary crew, believing they were facilitating cultural exchange, had been deceived. The people who had opened their homes and offices to what they thought were filmmakers had unknowingly aided foreign intelligence. Professor Tabatabai's academic pride had been manipulated into revealing sensitive information. Nazanin's idealism and ambition had been exploited to recruit her into an intelligence network she didn't even know she was part of. The entire operation functioned through systematic deception that transformed human connection into intelligence collection. This raised questions that intelligence services rarely acknowledged publicly. Where were the ethical boundaries of espionage? When did legitimate intelligence gathering become manipulation of innocent people? How did operatives reconcile the personal relationships they built as covers with the ultimate betrayal those relationships represented? Rachel, Thomas, and Layla had been trained to compartmentalize these concerns, to focus on mission objectives rather than moral complications. But the psychological cost of such work accumulated over years and careers, leaving invisible scars that no operational success could fully compensate for. The operation's conclusion came not with dramatic revelation, but with bureaucratic finality. The mission file was archived in Mossad's classified database, accessible only to senior officials and analysts who might reference its methods for future operations. The operatives received commendations that would never appear in public records. The intelligence collected was distributed through secure channels to military planners, policymakers, and allied intelligence services who would use it without ever knowing its source. And in Tehran, life continued as it always had, with Iranian officials completely unaware that foreign spies had walked through their capital for 5 days, collecting secrets hidden in plain sight. Operation Celluloid Shadow achieved what all successful intelligence operations aspire to. It remained invisible while producing tangible strategic value. The documentary exists as public artifact, screened occasionally at film festivals and cultural events. But its true purpose, and the covert operation it concealed, remain known only to those who participated and those who read classified reports in secure facilities where such secrets are kept. The cameras that filmed Persian architecture also captured Iran's vulnerabilities. The conversations about Islamic geometry also extracted information about nuclear facilities. And the filmmakers who seemed so genuinely interested in Iranian culture were actually intelligence officers, executing one of the most sophisticated infiltration operations in Mossad's modern history. This is how nations conduct invisible warfare, through patience, deception, and the willingness to transform ordinary activities into extraordinary intelligence operations, through operatives who can be anyone, anywhere, hiding in plain sight behind covers so authentic that even close examination reveals nothing suspicious, and through the understanding that, in the shadow war between nations, the greatest victories are those that remain forever secret, known only through their consequences rather than their execution.